Net. The morning of my sister's wedding, I woke up at 5 a.m. without an alarm. That's how I knew something was wrong. I'm not a morning person, never have been. But that day I lay in the hotel bed staring at the ceiling of our room at the Fairmont, listening to the air conditioning hum, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the day was already tilted somehow, like a picture frame that's just slightly off. You can't always tell immediately. You just feel it. My name is Serena. I'm 31, I teach middle school English in Portland, Oregon, and I have exactly one sister, Ren, who is 4 years younger than me, funnier than me, and who spent the last 2 years planning the most beautiful wedding I had ever seen in my life. Flowers from a local greenhouse in Napa. A string quartet for the ceremony. A venue that used to be a converted winery, all exposed wood beams and soft golden light. Ren married into money. Not obscene money, but the kind of money that has opinions. Her fiancé, now husband, Felix, comes from a family that has been in California real estate for 3 generations. His mother, Constance, was the kind of woman who wore her pearls like armor. His father, Douglas, smiled at you like he was already calculating your net worth. Our parents are not wealthy. My dad, Frank, spent 30 years as a high school shop teacher. My mom, Helen, worked part-time at a dental office and raised us in a 2-bedroom house in Salem, Oregon, that still has the same kitchen linoleum from 1987. They're the most dignified, warmest people I have ever known. They saved for 2 years to help contribute to Ren's wedding. $2,000. They wrote the check with shaking hands and called it their gift. Constance had smiled when Ren told her that. It was the kind of smile that isn't one. I noticed it. Ren was too in love to see it. Felix was too used to his mother to question it. I filed it away. The rehearsal dinner the night before had been fine. Controlled. Constance had organized it at a restaurant in downtown Napa that had a 2-month waitlist, and she had seated our parents at the far end of the table near the kitchen, next to Felix's elderly great-aunt, who was hard of hearing and spent most of the dinner talking about her cat. My parents smiled through all of it. They complimented the food. My dad tried twice to start a conversation with Douglas, who gave one-word answers and then turned back to his business partner. I watched my mom fold and refold her napkin under the table. I said nothing. It was the rehearsal dinner. I didn't want to ruin anything for Ren. But I noticed the wedding ceremony itself was perfect. Ren cried at the altar. Felix cried too, which honestly surprised me and made me like him more. My dad walked her down the aisle and his voice broke when he said, "Her mother and I had to look at the ceiling for a full 30 seconds. The vows were personal and honest, and the string quartet played something I didn't recognize. But that made my chest ache in a good way. For exactly 45 minutes, everything was what it was supposed to be. Then we moved to the reception. The reception was in the main hall of the winery. Long communal tables. Fairy lights strung overhead, the smell of oak and late summer roses. There was a seating chart displayed at the entrance on a beautiful calligraphy board that Ren had designed herself. She'd spent 3 evenings on it. I had watched her. I found my name. Table 5, center of the room. Good placement. I looked for my parents, Frank and Helen. Table 11. I looked up. Table 11 was near the back, near the catering entrance, partially obscured by a decorative partition they put up to separate the bar area. I stood there for a moment. Then I went to find Ren. She was in a small anteroom off the main hall, getting her lipstick touched up. Her face was still bright from the ceremony. "Hey," I said. "Did you finalize the seating chart yourself?" She glanced at me. "Mostly. Constance helped with the layout. Why? Mom and Dad are at table 11. Ren blinked. That should be fine, right? It's a good table. It's behind the partition, near the kitchen." Something moved across her face. Not quite understanding, not quite alarm. "I'll check with Constance. She said she'd handle the final placement." I didn't say what I was thinking. Not yet. I found my mother first. She was standing near the entrance to the hall, holding her clutch with both hands, looking around the room with the careful expression of someone trying to seem like they're not lost. My dad was beside her, his one good suit, his silver tie that Ren had helped him pick out 6 weeks ago. "Table 11's lovely," my mother said when she saw me. "Near the back, lots of atmosphere." She was trying. She was always trying. "Come on," I said. "Let's get you some water." I got them settled, found them their table, which was fine, perfectly fine, white tablecloth and a little vase of flowers like every other table, and I smiled and I told him the ceremony was beautiful and I meant it. My dad put his arm around my mom. She leaned into him. I went to find Constance. She was at the head table, the long one at the front of the room, arranging name cards with the focused energy of someone who had been doing this for decades. Felix's aunts, his college roommates, his business associates from the firm, all the people Douglas and Constance had added to the guest list over Wren's quiet objections. "Constance," I said, pleasantly, "I am a middle school teacher. I know how to sound pleasant while meaning something else entirely. I was looking at the seating. My parents are at table 11. She looked up. Her expression didn't change. Yes. The layout came together quite nicely, I thought. The head table has 12 seats. Felix's parents are there, his aunts, his college friends. I paused. The bride's parents aren't at the head table. We had to make some adjustments, she said. Priorities, you understand. The head table is for immediate family and close. Wren's parents are immediate family and close. Wren's parents are immediate family. A small, cooling silence. Felix's family is quite large, Constance said. We simply ran out of. There are 2 empty seats at the head table, I said. I counted. Her expression shifted then. Just slightly. Just enough. The smile went thinner and her chin came up a half-inch, and I understood in that moment, completely and clearly, that this had not been an accident. I'm sure your parents are comfortable where they are, she said. They seemed, the smallest hesitation, perfectly at home. I looked at her. I thought about my mother folding her napkin. My father's silver tie. $2,000 and a check written with shaking hands. I'm sure they are, I said. I walked away. I found Wren. She was talking to Felix near the bar, laughing at something, her dress catching the light. She looked like a painting. I hated that I was about to interrupt it. Wren, can I have 2 minutes? She read my face. She's known my face for 27 years. She excused herself. I told her everything, quickly. The 2 empty seats. What Constance had said, the perfectly at home with its half-second of loaded silence. Wren's face went through several things. Disbelief first, then a dawning, unhappy recognition. I think part of her had known, somewhere, that this might happen. Then something that looked like grief, because when you realize your mother-in-law has made your parents feel small on your wedding day, you can't unknow it. I'll talk to Felix, she said. Okay, I'll fix it. Okay, she went to Felix. I watched them talk. Felix's face went confused, then uncomfortable, then he glanced toward his mother across the room. He said something to Wren, she said something back. He ran a hand through his hair, then he walked over to Constance. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I watched Constance's posture. Straight, still, certain, and I watched Felix's shoulders, rounded, conciliatory, familiar, and I knew before he came back what had happened. He returned to Wren. I was close enough to hear. She said it was just the way the layout worked out. She said it's not worth making a scene. She said, Felix. Wren's voice was very quiet. Are you seriously telling me on our wedding day that your mother's seating arrangement is not worth? I'm not saying it's right. I'm saying let's get through today. We can talk about all of this. Talk about it when, Wren, when, Felix. He looked at the floor. Please just let today be today. Wren looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at me. I looked back at her. I excused myself and went to the restroom. I needed 60 seconds alone. I stood at the sink and ran cold water over my wrists the way you do when you're trying to slow everything down, and I thought about what I was willing to do and what I wasn't. I thought about one ain. I thought about the fact that this was her day, her marriage, her life, not mine to blow up. I thought about my parents, who would never ask me to do anything, who were probably right now making polite conversation at table 11 and complimenting the centerpiece. And then I thought about Constance saying perfectly at home with that half-inch of chin lift. I dried my hands. I went back out. The reception coordinator, a young woman named Jo with a clipboard and an earpiece, was doing a final run-through of the evening's program near the side entrance. I introduced myself as the maid of honor. I told her I needed to make a small adjustment to the program. The bride would like to add a brief moment at the beginning of dinner, I said. Family acknowledgement. Just 2 minutes. Jo checked her clipboard. Is this confirmed with? The bride asked me to handle it, I said. Which was not exactly true, but was not exactly false either, because Ren had looked at me and I had looked at her, and some things between sisters don't require words. Jo nodded and made a note. Dinner began. The string quartet shifted to something quieter. People found their seats. The servers began moving between tables with water and bread. The coordinator handed me the microphone. I walked to the center of the room. I didn't rush. I've stood in front of 27 12-year-olds who all wanted me to fail. A room of 120 adults in their best clothes was not going to rattle me. Good evening, everyone. My voice came out steady. For those I haven't met, I'm Serena. I'm Ren's older sister and her maid of honor, and I've been given a few minutes to say something before dinner. The room settled into attention. I've been thinking all day about what to say tonight. There's the obvious, Ren and Felix, how beautiful the ceremony was, how happy I am for them. All of that is true. I mean every word of it. I paused. A breath, but I want to take a moment to talk about two people who I don't think have been properly recognized today. I turned and looked at table 11, at the back of the room, behind the partition. My parents, Frank and Helen, could you stand up? I watched my parents look at each other. My mother's hand went to her mouth. My dad, my wonderful, steady dad, put his palm on her back and stood first, and she stood with him. There was a warm scatter of applause from the tables near them. 32 years ago, I said. My parents got married in a courthouse in Salem, Oregon, because they couldn't afford anything else. They didn't have a reception. They didn't have a string quartet. My dad wore a suit he borrowed from his brother. My mom wore a dress she made herself. I heard my mother make a small sound across the room. They have been showing up for each other and for their daughters every single day since then. They drove 11 hours for this wedding. They saved money they did not easily have to contribute to this day. I looked directly at table 11. They deserve to be at the front of every room they walk into, especially this one. I let that sit for a moment. So, I said, and I smiled, and I let my voice go easy, conversational, like I was just saying the most natural thing in the world. I've taken the liberty of having 2 place settings moved. Mom, Dad, there are seats for you at the head table tonight, right next to Ren. The room, this beautiful, expensive room full of Constance's carefully arranged world, went very quiet. I looked at Constance. She was sitting at the head table. Her face was a controlled, careful blank. Douglas had gone very still beside her. I looked at Felix. He was staring at me. Then he looked at Ren. Ren was already standing. She walked the length of the room to table 11. She took both of her parents' hands, and she walked them to the head table herself. The applause that followed was the loudest sound of the evening. I won't pretend the rest of the night was perfect. Constance did not speak to me. She did not speak to my parents. She ate her dinner with her back at a precise angle and her pearls absolutely still, and she smiled at the room with a smile that isn't one. Douglas made small talk with the man to his left and did not look at the empty chairs where 2 name cards had recently been rearranged. Felix danced with Ren. He held her like he meant it. At one point, I saw him lean down and say something in her ear, and she tilted her face up at him, and I couldn't read her expression from where I was standing. Something complicated, something real. My dad danced with my mom to a song neither of them knew the name of, and they didn't care. She put her head on his shoulder. He kept his hand very steady on her back. I drank 1 glass of wine, and then another, and I sat with the bridesmaids and I laughed at the appropriate moments, and at one point Ren found me by the bar, and she didn't say anything for a second, just looked at me. You realize you set off a bomb in the middle of my wedding reception, she said. I know. Constance is going to make Felix's life very difficult about this. I know that too. Ren looked at her champagne. Mom was crying. I know. Good crying. I know. She looked at me. Her eyes were bright. Thank you. I drove home to Portland 2 days later. My phone had 12 texts from various members of Felix's extended family, ranging from concerned to cold to one from a cousin I'd never met that just said that was inappropriate and you should apologize. I did not respond to that one. I got a voicemail from Constance 6 days after the wedding. Her voice was measured and precise, each word placed carefully, the way you place expensive things on a shelf. She said that my behavior had been disruptive and self-centered, that I'd embarrassed her family in front of their colleagues and friends, that a gesture like that should have been discussed and approved rather than executed unilaterally, that she hoped going forward I would respect appropriate boundaries. I listened to it twice. Then I called my mother. "Did Ren tell you what Constance said?" I asked. "Some of it." My mother's voice was quiet, careful. Then, "Serena, when you said those things about the courthouse, about the dress I made, I wasn't expecting that. I haven't thought about that dress in years. Do you still have it?" A pause. "In a box in the attic. You should take it out sometime." I heard her breath catch a little. "You know," she said, "your father and I were talking last night. He said it was the best wedding he's ever been to." "Dad cries at commercials," I said. "He doesn't count." She laughed. She laughed. The real laugh, not the careful one. 3 weeks later, Ren called me on a Tuesday evening. She was at home, Felix was at work. She had a cup of tea and a specific quietness in her voice that meant she'd been sitting with something for a while. "He apologized," she said. "Felix. He said he should have stood up to his mother before it got to that point. He said he'd been doing it his whole life, smoothing things over, keeping the peace, and that he knew it wasn't fair to me." She paused. "He said watching my sister walk to the microphone and do what he should have done made him feel ashamed. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't say anything." "I'm not saying everything is fixed," Ren said. "I'm not naive. Constance isn't going to change. Felix has 30 years of habits. We're going to have to actually figure this out." Another pause. "But he saw it. Finally, clearly, he saw it." "That matters," I said. "Yeah." A breath. "Yeah, it does. I've been thinking lately about the difference between keeping the peace and keeping the truth. For most of my life, I've been the steady one, the responsible one, the teacher, the big sister, the person who notices things and files them away and decides that the timing isn't right, the moment isn't right, someone's feelings might get hurt. I have swallowed a lot of things in the name of not making a scene. But here's what I know now, sitting on my couch in Portland on a Thursday night, grading 8th grade essays about To Kill a Mockingbird. My parents stood in that room at the back and they smiled and they would have kept smiling all night long and never said a word about it. Not to me, not to each other probably. They would have called it a lovely wedding and meant it. That's who they are. And someone had to notice that. Someone had to say it out loud. Constance called me self-centered. Maybe. Or maybe the thing she was actually reacting to was that for the first time in probably a very long time, someone simply refused to pretend she hadn't done what she'd done. I'm a teacher. I spend my days asking 12-year-olds to find the courage to say what they mean, to not erase themselves to make someone else comfortable. I figure I should probably do the same. My parents' 33rd anniversary is in March. My dad is already planning something. He called me last week to ask whether he should make a reservation or if showing up and hoping for the best was a viable strategy. I told him it was not a viable strategy. He said he had gotten this far with it. I told him 33 years of luck was not transferable. He laughed. Then he said, "Hey, that thing you said at the wedding, about the dress." "Yeah?" A pause. Long enough that I thought maybe the call had dropped. "Then, your mother wore that dress on every anniversary for the first 10 years. I didn't know she still had it." I didn't say anything. "I'm going to ask her to wear it in March," he said. "If that's not too strange." "It's not too strange, Dad. Good." Another pause. "Good." I'm writing this from my couch on a quiet November evening, the rain coming down outside the way it always does in Portland, slow and steady and thorough, and I'm thinking about a room full of expensive people going still because 2 ordinary ones were finally put where they belonged. I'd do it again, without hesitation. Some silences deserve to be broken. I've thought a lot about what courage actually costs. Not the movie version of it, the dramatic music, the slow walk to the microphone, the crowd parting. The real version is quieter and a lot less certain. The real version is standing in a hotel bathroom running cold water over your wrists, asking yourself if you're about to do the right thing or just the satisfying thing. Sometimes those are the same. Sometimes they're not. That night, I think they were. Here's what I've come to believe. The things we tolerate in silence don't disappear. They accumulate. Every folded napkin, every careful smile, every time my mother said, "Table 11 is lovely," when she meant something else entirely, those moments don't just pass, they settle into people, into families, into marriages. And eventually something has to give. Constance didn't seat my parents at the back of the room because she forgot about them. She did it because she had learned over a long time that no one would say anything, that the cost of keeping the peace would always be paid by the people with the least power in the room. My parents would absorb it, Ren would rationalize it, Felix would smooth it over, and Constance would continue, unchallenged, certain that her version of events was the only one that counted. What I did wasn't complicated. I told the truth in a room where the truth had been quietly edited out. That's it. I didn't humiliate anyone who hadn't already chosen their behavior. I didn't manufacture drama. I just refused to participate in the pretense that two people who deserved honor should be grateful for a partition and a table near the kitchen. There's a kind of intelligence that takes years to develop. The ability to see a situation clearly without the fog of wanting it to be different. I spent most of my 20s hoping things would resolve themselves, hoping people would change without being asked, hoping that if I was patient enough and generous enough and quiet enough, the difficult people in my life would eventually just become easier. They didn't. They rarely do. What changes is whether you're willing to keep pretending you don't see what you see. Felix apologized to Ren, not because I embarrassed him, or not only because of that. He apologized because watching someone else do what he should have done held up a mirror he couldn't look away from. That's the thing about integrity. It's visible. Its presence illuminates, and so does its absence. My parents didn't ask me to fight for them. They never would. That's exactly why someone had to. I think about the dress my mother made herself for a courthouse wedding 33 years ago, the way she kept it in a box in the attic all this time, the way my father didn't know. All those years of quiet, steady, unannounced love, the kind that doesn't need a venue or a string quartet or a head table, the kind that just keeps showing up. That's the inheritance they actually gave me. Not money, not status. The understanding that the people in your life who show up without fanfare are the ones worth standing up for, loudly even when it costs you something, especially then.